I'd gotten through the course, and we'd had another conversation after one of these calls, and I'm like, "What's next, James?"
Mm-hmm.
I think you said shrooms.
Well, you kept asking, I want the next level.
I want the next level. Where's phase 2? What's the next course? The moment just arrived. It was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to do this. I'm taking the jump. As we mixed the mushrooms in with the water, my comment was, is it the red pill or the blue pill? Let's go down the rabbit hole. I was ready. It was time.
Hello and welcome to the James Xander Trip. Joining me today is special guest Richard Lloyd-Roberts. Richard is an entrepreneur, spiritual explorer, and dear friend. He's also a member of my God Mode Mastermind, which you can join at unlockgodmode.org. In this episode, we're going to dive into Richard's first ever mushroom trip, our shared love for personal growth and metaphysics, our fascination with Neville Goddard's teachings, what success principles have most helped us in life, and what it takes to unlock God Mode in the simulation. Richard, welcome to the James Xander Trip.
Thank you, James. Pleasure to be here.
We are recording this episode in your lovely home in person, and something interesting happened in this home last night.
It did, and it's been a journey, hasn't it? I was recalling yesterday the trip, quote unquote, which has actually probably been about 8 months. It was quite the experience of meeting you and online, and then having a call, doing God Mode, joining the group, and everything has led to this thing that happened yesterday, which was predestined.
Do you want to take us through the trip first, or the trip that started 8 months ago?
Let's do the trip first.
Let's do the trip first. So for context, you took 2 grams of psilocybin, your first ever time doing mushrooms.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm curious, how were you feeling going up to the trip? And how are you feeling? What was the emotions that were coming up? Was there any nervousness? What were your intentions?
There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear coming into it. I think I told you before we got into it, I'd had some particularly negative experiences with hashish and marijuana as a child. Not as a child is probably the wrong word. As a teenager, 20-year-old. So my mindset had been to never do anything of that nature again. So as we got closer to taking the mushrooms, as you'll vouch for, I got more and more anxious, to the point where I'm like, look, my dogs are anxious too. It's obviously the wrong time. How much are you giving me? Why are you giving me that much? James, I don't want that much. Put it back. Which is now on the other side of it quite funny. But there was a lot to confront just to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it got anxious for me too, because I was starting to think, okay, maybe this is not the right day? And I made it very clear to you that there was no pressure at all.
No,
it was an invitation for you to experience something that I thought would be very beneficial to you, but zero pressure. What was the moment where you said, okay,
we say zero pressure, James, but you flew all the way from Bali to help me with this trip. There's no pressure.
I flew from Bali
for other reasons,
to visit you as a friend.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the potentiality of doing a trip.
Yeah. And
so describe to me the moment where you said, okay, we're doing it. Let's go.
I think the moment just arrived. It was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to do this. I'm taking the jump. As we mixed the mushrooms in with the water, my comment was, is it the red pill or the blue pill? Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready. It was time. The decision, the intention was there. I think everything was set up really well. And I just had to overcome the fear, which I did. So
I find it funny that in the course that you took, Unlock God Mode, there's one lesson out of the 30 lessons that's about psychedelics.
Yep.
And it's the one lesson when we had our feedback call months and months ago, and you said, I like the course, but what is this lesson about psychedelics?
Yeah, I remember that quite well, actually. And it was like, James, I think this Unlock God Mode thing's great, but I don't know how many people are going to buy into the mushroom thing. Probably should separate that, which is kind of funny because here I am. Now I see the connection. I really do. It's a good path.
Can you run me through your experience of the trip? What happened during the ceremony? What came up for you? Memories, visual imagery, emotions. Describe it to the audience in as much detail as you want.
Yeah, so initially I started off with colors and little like dancing things and patterns and very quickly for me it got dark. It seemed like probably time-wise I don't even know, because I sort of recall sort of sitting up and saying, how long's it been? You're like 5 minutes. Okay. But it seemed like a long time, and then it seemed like no time. So I experienced at the beginning just having to sort of overcome the fear of being out of control more than anything.
Yeah.
There was definitely some things I had to get through in that early stage of sort of my own anger, my own anxiety, my own fear. I know I set up a few times and like, what? Why are you doing this to me, James? I hate you. Which was now funny, but you really did a good job on helping me through that, I have to say. And you know, it was like, it's just the mushrooms, it's just a trip. And so I settled back down again, and then I would come through stuff. I loved the visuals. I really did. It was quite interesting to see that. When I was traveling sort of along, the next thing I really remember was confronting this block. Whatever it was a block. It was something that was deep inside of me. And I got up and I went into the toilet and threw up a face in the toilet. It was quite amazing. It was this, like, I'm throwing up, like, really not like much. There wasn't anything there. It was more, I think, more mental than it was anything else. And as this thing sat in the bottom of the toilet, I'm like, get out. Don't come back. I gave it the finger and flushed it down the toilet. And when I came back, I was light and happy, and like this being had gone from me, or entity, or whatever. I you know, the mushrooms will tell me that later. Like, it will, you know, it was something. It was a
huge difference, because that first 40 to 60 minutes, I could see you were struggling with something. And there was some, almost like my intuition was that there was some negative entity attached to you. Like
I get that. Yeah, for sure. It was like a face of something ugly and horrible.
And it really reminded me, it was a stark reminder for me that, you know, these trips, as much as I talk about the benefits of mushrooms, they can be very difficult. They can be tough, especially that first hour or two. If you have any blocks or any shadows that you haven't looked at in a long time, the mushrooms are going to go directly to that. Yep. My theory is that it's because if they don't deal with the shadow or the block, you won't be able to actually ascend to that 4D, 5D level later on in the trip. And so in order to get you to the light, we need to go through whatever darkness is blocking the way and remove it.
Well, and you had said to me beforehand, and I think I even remember having a conversation with somebody else in the group about this, that, you know, this happens occasionally. So, and there was, you know, just keep confronting and facing stuff and with the intention of getting through it. And that really helped.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm really glad. Yeah. My advice always is surrender.
Yep.
Trust that the mushrooms will take you where it's needed.
Yep.
Allow yourself to be led there. Trust and get curious about the darkness. Whatever darkness shows up, get curious about it. The last thing you want to do is resist it. The mushrooms are helping you unknot the blocks.
Yeah, and that was always in the back of my mind, not to resist, and just to sort of see how much I could face and confront. And then I recall moments of saying things to you that probably weren't very appropriate.
You were frustrated with the darkness.
but it was okay because I knew you were there. So it was funny. I would sit up, see you sitting there, kind of be rest assured that I had my sitter. The person was guiding me through. I trusted you would get me through it, and the mushrooms would get me through it. So it did. And from when I think what happened with that one, wasn't it? Was we went downstairs after that.
Yeah. So the moment you went to the bathroom and threw up, and as you described, it was mostly energetic throwing up or energetic purging. The moment you did that and you came back to the room, you were 50 pounds lighter energetically.
And brighter too. Everything was
brighter, more free, literally as if a huge weight had been lifted off of you.
Yeah.
And there was a sense of like, okay, James, let's go downstairs. I'm ready for the trip now.
Wasn't they tidying up the kitchen or something?
So we left the bedroom because I usually like to do trips in a room, but I felt intuitively, okay, let's go downstairs. You have a really nice patio. Yep. We sat outside with your dogs.
Yep.
And tell us how the rest of the trip flowed from you for that point.
That was interesting. So the dogs all of a sudden became a really big part of the trip. I have two Bernese Mountain Dogs, just for people's reference, and they're quite big dogs. The male dog was sitting there like a protector, standing guard, looking out for me. And the girl dog was this character, and the character was my sister and my wife and the frail other sisters, and like that just needed me to love them or to look after them than I hadn't been doing. And I kind of was going through this phase of, why have I abandoned people? And I wanted to protect them. I kept running outside because the dog was sitting outside in the rain. I kept running out and trying to get her to come in, please, come in, be with me. And they would swap around. And then she came in and sat next to me for a bit and was like next to me, which was comforting. And then I kept looking at you for reassurance, but then all of a sudden you started to look like God to me, which was just, and now I'm sitting there looking at you going, okay, so he's staring out into space. What's over there? And I kept looking for the direction that you were looking to see where I was supposed to go next. And then my neighbor had a light on, which is never on. It was like a bathroom light that was on. And I'm like, James, do I go towards the light, or is this the light I should be following? Or, Then I got into like, I want my wife back. Is it Monday yet? And so the reassurance there that, no, it's okay. You're good. It's just a trip. So that was sort of a moment for me of realizing that I needed people. I needed love and people in my life, which I think is what the mushrooms were trying to tell me, because I've been very resistant to that and hard. It's sort of like a characteristic I had of just hardening my heart and not giving love. So that was really, really super enlightening, which was a wonderful experience. And from there, we moved into almost like a creativity moving forward phase where I could actually start to see, okay, we're going in this direction now, which is me creating my future, being positive, learning, teaching, and it was a very gentle sort of like a coming along the runway ready to take off, but not take off, I don't know, glide in or something. It was a beautiful phase. It really was.
What would you say was the biggest lesson from the trip? How would you describe it?
To trust myself, and to know that I know. The other big one I think that I've kind of come out of this is I keep looking at what's reality, and that was a big one for me. Is you just create it. We both follow the Neville. I mean, that's why I found you, is because of Neville Goddard's works, and the whole way through that theme is you create your future. You create your future. You create everything, and that really shone through for me. Even today, like the next day, I've been sitting here thinking, okay, so here I am. James is working. I'm going to go put up all these lights and do that. And then James will come out from his work the minute I stop work and I've finished. And hey presto, you did. And then I started thinking about my wife coming home from, she's away on a trip right now. Not a mushroom trip, but she's on a trip. And 2 minutes later, she texted me, I can't wait to come home. Which was funny through the trip, wasn't it? I kept saying, is she home yet? Can I go to the airport and pick her up?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think the main points for me. Oh, you know what? No, actually there was another one. Let me get my notes because I did write some stuff as we were doing this. There was some very prominent things. So for me, this is some of the notes I took yesterday as we were coming out of it. It was a journey from darkness to light. I met God in the form of James, but I did realize that God is with me everywhere. I was dirty and I cleansed my soul by coming through this trip. The light that I saw in that bathroom was always there. I just turned away from it. So there's to be no more turbulence, no more darkness. I can push that away now. Then I started drawing and like doing music, which I have stopped for most of my life, which came back to that creativity. And then I forget when I wrote this. It was somewhere in the middle of it. It's like A Reason for Being, a story of darkness to light by Richard Lloyd-Roberts. For all good people everywhere, join me in celebrating God. So many signs along the way that this was meant to be. He's always by my side. I see it now. The house I create is with him. I'm ready to create. I am. Those are some of the notes I put. I mean, they're wow. You know?
Yeah. The God is always guiding you piece of it. I think that was huge.
Yeah.
Huge for you in the trip. And also for me in my trips, it always comes up that God is always there.
Yeah.
It's like the mushrooms are reconnecting me to the divine.
Indeed. Yeah, for sure.
What is different for you now after this trip? Is there something that you can't unknow or unsee now that you've seen it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's almost like I'm going to reference what I said earlier on about the Matrix. That there's much, much more to everything, much more to life. There's, you know, we are creators. We're bigger than this game we're currently playing, and you can't not know that. You know, as I walked around the neighborhood this morning, it was kind of funny. There was nobody around anywhere, which is kind of unusual. And it's Halloween, so as I'm walking past all the gardens, there's all these like Halloween props, right? But they were like skeletons and you know, dead bodies and witches and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, isn't that funny? Did everybody disappear? And it's like, and then as I'm walking, people started to appear, and I'm like, oh look, I'm kind of integrating back into this game, but I know that I can create this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the game I'm creating. This is the future I'm creating. And so therefore I am a creator, and that's never going to leave me. And then the love thing, you know, really projecting and being loving to other people.
Mm. In what way has the trip opened your heart?
Well, mostly for my wife. That was a big part of the trip. That was the one of the lessons was to stop pushing people, or stop pushing her away, actually, I think at this point. How do I say this? You know, I'd become so hard. So this was a lesson of like, you could lose everybody. You really could lose everybody by being so hard and closed off. So be loving, be caring, support your team, respect the people around you. They're all part of your game.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know, they're all making up your matrix and your game, and they're all part of your own group. So you should be appreciative of that and grateful.
Isn't it incredible how in the beginning of the trip you felt such resistance of, let's stop this, I don't want to do this. And then as the knots got unraveled and the mushrooms began to really work with you, you found yourself in that freedom, that light.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. And I see a difference in you today versus the previous days. There's a lightness around you. There's a openness in you.
Yeah, and it's funny. So since you arrived here, which has been, 3 days, 4 days, as I was doing the trip, the whole time of you being here was the trip. You know, we went to a restaurant, and somebody that I'm kind of working with showed up in a restaurant randomly, at an Indian restaurant in like the middle of nowhere, and there she's sitting with her boyfriend, and I'm like, that's odd. And then as I was reflecting as I was kind of going through a trip, I'm like, how long has this trip been? So like a week?
That's right. It's what we talked about earlier, is when you decide to do a trip, it's almost like the trip begins the moment you make the decision, and the days leading up to the trip have weird synchronicities and lessons and kind of preparing your soul for the experience.
Well, there's so many signs that like have been pushing me, I wouldn't say pushing me, but preparing me for this. It was a note I'd made, like the signs were always there. You just weren't looking. I was on a call with a couple of friends, and it was just a random call that I decided to make happen, and the whole call was about trip. And I was just listening. I didn't actually have anything to contribute to it because I'd never done one, but listening to it was fascinating, which was a preparation for this.
It's amazing. It's amazing how the universe orchestrates all the little details that lead up to the actual event.
Yeah.
What was particularly challenging about the trip? And is there anything you would say to someone embarking on their first journey, now having done your own?
You know, I think the challenging was my own resistance. You have to do it at the right time, I think. And this was the right time, but I'd still I hadn't really fully prepared for it. I was scared, but that was from past trauma, if you like. But I think, a piece of advice for somebody is, if you're going to do a trip, you have a person with you that knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You were amazing, honestly. I couldn't have done it with anybody else, I don't think. That would have been hard.
What are some things that after this trip you want to leave in the past? Is there things that you've realized through this experience that are no longer serving you?
Yeah, holding on to resentments. And we were talking sort of towards the end of the trip last night, and I was talking about my dad. And it was a bit that happened in the trip, and it was like I was being like, we were sitting outside, and somehow I got this sarcastic personality come on. I know, James, let's play a game. Things my dad would say to me. And I remember saying all these like sarcastic, rude things. Maybe I thought what my dad said or whatever. And then today, or at the end of the trip, I was like, maybe I should forgive him. And you said, well, have you forgiven him? I'm like, not really. But this morning I did. I just did. Because it was the thing that if I didn't forgive him, I'm holding on to the resentment, not him.
Exactly.
So it's those things that you hang on to that you think serve you, and they really don't. They're just holding you down.
Exactly. It's from that place of love that the mushrooms connect you to. It becomes so obvious the places where you are not in love.
Yeah.
It's from the place of pure alignment on psilocybin that you realize, oh, this part of my life is not in alignment. This relationship is not in alignment. The resentment I'm holding on to this person is not in alignment.
Yeah. And back to the light, right? And the love and being with God.
You've been studying the powers of the mind and the power of thought for many, many, many years. How has this trip confirmed or reconfirmed some of the things you've seen in Neville's work and other authors?
I think it's made it more powerful. It's really sort of emphasized the power of the mind. As I was going through the trip, I started to be able to put my attention on something and keep it there and make it go forward, if that's the right way of saying it. I know now that I'm capable of anything. Whether or not I believe that in the past is irrelevant now, because I know now I am. So, and why is because I decided I can create my whole universe around me if I want to. And I will.
Talk to me about Neville Goddard and what his work has meant to you, and why are we both so fascinated with his teachings?
Neville's amazing. I mean, I've done a lot of different things philosophically in my life, studied different religions and different authors. The minute I listened to Neville, it just totally and utterly resonated with me from a I think, my viewpoint on it is we are causative over everything, and that he reinforced that. I've got people that study Christianity and they read the Bible in a certain way, and it's not necessarily very positive. When I listen to Neville talk about it, it just makes sense. The lessons in the Bible are really lessons. They're analogies. They're ways of showing you the way, but not necessarily in the way that some people read it. It's just a different look, and it's I've had so many manifestations of things that I didn't expect I could have through just following the work.
What are some of the key lessons from Neville that illuminated the path for you?
Well, the big one is the dream fulfilled for me. It's imagining something as if it already happened, as opposed to somewhere off in the distant future. And that's, I think, that kind of resonates through most of his work. Is if you can imagine the scenario as if you already have it. Oh, I already have this. It's already mine. It seems to be the key of all of it. It's just, I already have it. I exist as, it's here. I've got it. And there's no doubt. And at one point I came up with something that was like parallel to another thing I'd learned, which is if you do it with a serenity instead of effort. So in other words, you just assume, and I'm going to reuse a word that probably people won't understand, but it's called beingness, to be. If you assume the state of being that which you desire already, you already are. If you bring it down a notch and try and put effort into it and physicality, it becomes, the universe has now got to do more computations, I think, or as opposed to you just sit there and go, you know what, I have it. Now, there will be actions to be taken sometimes. You're manifesting the car. You probably have to go buy it with the money that you've been given by the universe, or however that comes about. But yeah, just be. I am.
How has that played out in your life when you look back at your successes? Where have you been using, consciously or unconsciously, Neville's techniques?
For me, it's money. I stopped worrying about money 10 years ago, and I started focusing on exchange because I always knew the money was going to be there if I exchanged. And that's all I don't think about money like I need it. I just have it. And I always do. Do I need something? I have the money for it. That's it. How it comes to me is another story, but it comes to me.
For someone who's struggling with money, who might be listening to this, what are some words of wisdom you can impart to them?
Stop worrying about it. Really, I mean, you have innately in yourself, you have skills. If you don't have skills, you can learn skills. Your skill would be to learn. If you don't know how to learn, you can learn how to learn. There's always a way. There's no barrier that is too big to overcome. So, I can't do this is just you saying I can't do this. So you'll get, I can't do this. So think positively in a state of I am already. And then if you put your mind to something and you create it around a purpose and a reason for doing it, you can do anything. I've proven that. I didn't get an education as a kid, yet we're doing very well with technology that I just learned as I went along because I just figured out how to learn it. It's easy when you believe it is.
How important is the burning desire to get the thing you want?
Oh, that's top of the charts too. I mean, it's if you don't, you'll get distracted. You'll let other things get in the way. You know where you're going to be. You know the end result because you've already manifested it. And then the burning desire and intention is sort of the same thing for me. It's like a driving force to get to where you want to go, and then followed by persistence. So it may not happen straight away. So I'll give you some examples, James. When my wife and I started our business like 10 years ago, we would sit in a coffee shop every January the 1st, and we would write out our desires, goals for the year. And the first 5 years, we noticed it was taking 4 or 5 years to get them. Now it's instant. I mean, it's sort of like it just happens now. I think we've got a list on our fridge right now of all our personal goals for the year already ticked off. That would have been like a 3 or 4 year plan back in the time. So I think that's another thing, is persistence in continuing to practice your mind, using your mind.
So what do you think changed between the time back then when it would take 4 or 5 years to get everything on the list checked off versus now?
We got better at it. We put less less effort into it and more just thought. So I really adopted this. When I started studying Neville, was actually the big key part for that too, was just I think about it and then I let it go. And as Neville says, the universe will take care of it. Just keep it in your mind as this. I have it already, and then it will just show up. A little trick to make sure it's there when it's there. People sometimes go, "Oh, that's not it." Well, it was.
What are some other principles of success or manifestation that you've learned either from Neville or other teachers?
There's a few. I'm working on one right now as a course, actually, which is purpose. And I've studied quite a few different people that talk about purpose. Purpose defined is the reason for doing something, or the use of something. So that as a definition is good, but what you kind of do is you wrap it into a purpose statement. So the reason I'm running this business is because I want to help mankind free themselves from their ills and troubles, or something along those lines. If you have a strong purpose for yourself, then when you meet other people that share that purpose, you're going to activate them to join you in getting it done. If you have no purpose, you're just drifting aimlessly. So then you have this strong purpose. Then, first lesson you have in God mode, then you have to have the intention to carry it out. If you don't have the intention to carry it out, you're just going to, once again, dead end. You're going to stop. So you have the intention, you keep creating the purpose, so that creation comes in, and you just keep doing the actions necessary. So I have a little like business planning thing that where I teach people. You have a goal, you have your purpose, you have your rules that you're going to play by, you have products or services that you produce or give to people that can be exchanged with you for money or other goods and services. And then you also have to know what it would look like if it were perfect. And that's where the manifestation part comes in. So if you're going to build a business, you're going to kind of sit down and do like a little exercise. If it were this is how it were going to be. Then you turn it into the manifestation technique of it's already like it. But you can also add, okay, how am I now? What do I need to do to get to that point? There is some action necessary in the physical universe to make things happen. So you kind of like, you can compare one against the other, and you can say, okay, if I do these steps, like I'm going to build a building, I'm going to put a door in it, and I'm going to have some glass windows, and et cetera, you'll move yourself towards achievement of the goal. And the universe will follow along and make it happen.
What are some mistakes that people make on that journey of manifestation?
Distractions. Trying to do too much things that don't align with your purpose and don't align with your goals. I get kind of carried off. Oh, I think I'll go do this now as well, and I'll go add this as well. Our success has been specialization. Once you specialize in a subject or something, or a business or an aspect of a business, you become so knowledgeable over it. You can't be budged. That's power. Somebody asks you a question, you automatically know the answer and the solution to it. We happen to be in the consignment industry creating websites, and I think I pretty much know any problem that could be there and what the solution is. So when people come, I just fix it. There's no lag, there's no time. It's just, I know what that is, done, which has been really helpful.
What is something you're currently trying to create or manifest?
So now I'm trying to create a series of courses to teach what I've just told you. I would like to elevate people and society to a higher level, just to bring them up. We've got too much going on in society that's the opposite of that. So the knowledge I've accumulated over 60 odd years, I'd like to share it. I think it's a good shortcut for people. Why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is one thing that you would want to share with the listener on how they can reach success in their life?
Unlock God mode. Study stuff. Learn the mind. Learn how you work. Learn who you are. Delve into how we function and what makes you tick, and what's your purpose. Well, what do you really want to do? Have ambition. Don't accept the norms. This matrix that we're in can be altered by your mind, and it can be altered by your actions, and it's easy to do. So give up all the negativity and the past losses and just kind of go from there.
Aside from Neville Goddard, you mentioned Charles Hannell, Dale Carnegie, and Napoleon Hill as being major influences on your life. What teachings from each of these authors have left the most lasting impact on your thinking?
For Charles Hannell, it was learning about the conscious and subconscious mind, and how the conscious mind can affect the subconscious mind into creating pretty much whatever it is you want. Charles Hannell was one of the original New Thought movement back in, I think it was 1910. He wrote the book, the Master Key System or the Master Key to Success? One was Napoleon Hill and one was Charles Hannell.
I think it was the Master Key System.
Yeah, so the Master Key to Success was Napoleon Hill, who actually wrote to Charles Hannell and said he followed his work. So the Master Key System is one of the original books on conscious and subconscious thought. So his book is the world. He states it as the world without and the world within. So the world within being your subconscious mind, the world without being your conscious mind. So if you have your conscious mind tell your subconscious mind what it is you want, the subconscious mind then goes to work and starts producing it. So a lot of his work follows that. Well, all of his work follows that in different ways. One book I was reading the other day of his, I think it's called A New Psychology. There's an interesting thing where he says, if you want success for yourself, you should also want it for everybody else, because we're all one. We're all one in the universe. So if you want everybody else to be poor, you're really subconsciously telling yourself that you're going to be poor too.
And Napoleon Hill?
Napoleon Hill, so that's a good one. I studied all of the Napoleon Hill book. Then I went on to do the Napoleon Hill course. There's an online course that you can do that takes you through all of the principles of Napoleon Hill, which then gives you a certification as being a Napoleon Hill certified, not teacher, but student. That was a big one for me. The 17 principles were kind of a game changer. First one being definite main purpose. Second is having a mastermind group to help you grow your business. And then there's a lot of the other principles are like the traits of what you should offer people, like exchange and abundance and enthusiasm and applied faith and giving more than you say you're going to give. And the goal of that, or the ultimate thing, is whatever the mind can conceive and believe the mind can achieve. And in his tapes, he says, I will tell you the master key, and you will get it as soon as you get it, which is whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind will achieve. It's kind of funny. You're like, oh, yeah, I get that. But you really don't until you get to the end of the course. You're like, oh, now I get it. So just a great course on kind of like business in a way, how to be successful.
What's been the greatest business lesson you've learned in your life?
Ooh, that's a big one. Never fail to think big. Everything's possible. As an example, so I started quite a few years ago, a lighting company, and I was doing energy efficiency before anybody even really thought about energy efficiency. So we were selling induction lamps, which are like a Tesla lamp actually, LEDs before LED became popular. And it was really all about reducing the carbon footprint and using power consumption and also maintenance on a lot of these bulbs. I knew nothing about lighting, but I did manage to figure out the science of light and how the eyes are affected by different light sources. And I ended up, my first big job was a college where I relamped 3 huge parking decks. Then I got Bank of America as a client, and we were relamping all of their branches in Florida. And I kind of proceeded from there. The airport, Charlotte Airport, was a big one. So it's persistence, it's courage, it's learning your trade. Yeah.
You and I have both had the experience of losing a lot of money.
Yes.
And then rebuilding ourselves.
Yes.
Let's dive into that, because I think that is so important for anyone who's gone through any sort of failure, whether it's monetary or otherwise. How do we deal with the grief of losing success or losing money or losing something and rebuild back to success? What has your experience been like?
That was actually a good one. So when actually the lighting company cost me dearly, the airport job I was telling you about actually was quite an expensive mistake I made. Back to Napoleon Hill. So he talks about in one of the lessons, if you fail, sit down and write a list of your assets. What have you got? And I did that. I sat down in a little Starbucks somewhere, and I just started writing, what do I actually have? And it was quite surprising when you start to give yourself some positive reinforcement that you know a lot more than you think. And through doing that exercise, as I was doing it, I was sat next to some kid building mobile apps. And I just turned to him and I went, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm building mobile apps. And I'm like, oh, let me see. So I kind of looked at him and took a mental note of the software he was using, went home and started playing with it. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? My purpose in life at the time was to create great environments for people to flourish and prosper. So we go back to that purpose thing. So now I'm going to just change the purpose a little bit. So it's create great environments for people to flourish and prosper through technology. So it still kept me on my purpose of helping people do better. I just used a different avenue to fulfill that dream. So we went from nothing. I mean, when I'd lost the lighting company, I kind of almost 2 steps back and started stocking shelves at the grocery stores for $10 an hour.
What was that like?
It was good because I had a chance to sit back and think.
Right.
I didn't want the stress of trying to create something else. I had to really reevaluate where I was in life. I think I was 50 or something at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to start over. That's a shock. It is a big, I mean, it's not grief necessarily, but it was a big shock because you're like, now what? What do I do? And so that list of my strengths helped reinforce my confidence a little bit. And so we started building apps, and my wife went door to door selling apps, and we grew. I ended up becoming the top seller of this company's product in the country. And then they kept feeding me leads, so it just kind of snowballed. And then we turned it into a marketing agency and a website development company, and the rest is, as they say, history. Self-reflection's good. Yeah, really helps.
Are there any mindset shifts that need to happen to go from success to failure back to success?
I think you know this, James. Once you've done it once,
Yeah.
you know you're capable.
Yeah, there's a reference point that gets left behind in your brain.
Yep. You're like, well, I did it once, so I know I can do it again.
Exactly.
I mean, it wasn't a fluke, was it? No, it was. I can do it.
Oh, there's a small part that sometimes comes online and says, was that just luck or was that me?
It was you. I mean, it takes a lot of work to do it, right? It takes a lot of skill and determinism and mindset to achieve it the first time round.
Yeah.
You did something right, so that's back to that list. It's I did something right. What did I do right? Do that evaluation list. And you did an exercise on me after the trip, which was, listing out different things about my parents and then listing things about what I wanted. And that was really like refreshing too. It was the same kind of thing. It's like, look at all these traits that I adopted in my personality that served me.
Yes.
Some of them weren't good traits either, but they served me for that period of time. Well, now they no longer do. So evaluating and reevaluating yourself is something I think is something that should be done really on a consistent basis.
That was a fascinating exercise that I had you do with the traits. And what did you notice the traits from your mom and dad that you have borrowed?
All of them. Yeah, and some of them not nice.
Yeah.
We adopt these things because they seem at the time to be the winning personality. Oh, he always yells, so he always gets his way. So that one seems to be winning. So I'm going to adopt that. And you kind of like build up these layers of personalities that really aren't you, the true person. So the exercise in itself was good to look at because you're like, oh yeah, I've done that and I've done that and I do this and I do that and why? And so the mushrooms actually in this trip helped me really, really focus on that and discard.
There's a phrase that goes something like, the story of the son is the story of the father.
Yeah.
Do you see that in your life? And what did the mushrooms or just your own self-reflection showed you insights about that?
I think in this case, it was the mushrooms because I wouldn't look.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't look. When we were talking prior to the mushroom trip, you'd asked me something about relationships. And I consciously wasn't speaking to you. I knew I couldn't talk about it. And I actually was like sitting there thinking, I'm not telling him, but the mushrooms actually helped me or guided me to that. It's this, you need to see this, Richard, and you need to look at it and confront it. And I did. And now coming out the other end of it, I'm like, wow, what a thing to carry around.
The heaviness.
Yeah. And just like, for not just me, but the people that are in my life that want me and want to be friends with me and want to love me. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you.
Isn't it amazing the defenses and protections we put on ourselves from being hurt in the past?
Yeah, it's fear of being hurt again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember one of our mastermind calls, you'd asked me, what did I need help with? And I'd mentioned something about relationships, and then I kind of just blew it off because I'm like, oh, tough, and I don't really need any help. But I did, I did. But I wouldn't look at it.
I think one of the lessons we've both been learning is to ask for more help and also to be okay with receiving help.
Yes.
Because even you noticed in me,
yes,
when you would offer something and there would be almost a hesitation.
Oh, it was a barrier. I even said to my wife, I'm like, I really want to help James, but he seems to have something going on there.
It's interesting. Why is it so hard to sometimes receive help from the most well-intentioned people?
It's pride, I think, in a little bit of a way. Because you want to be right. We're trying to be right, aren't we, throughout life? We're trying to survive and get along, and survival depends on being right about our decisions. So we make a decision that makes us right, whether it's right or wrong in the rest of the world's eyes, we're right. And then we keep making the decision because it feels right. And then somebody comes along and says, no, come over here instead. And you're like, no, I'm right. I think that's actually a valuable lesson. I forget I saw something else on this the other day, but take the other person's perspective too. Look at another version of something. Let's say you believe in A, B, and C, and there's an opposing C, D, and E over here. Well, learn them both. What's to lose?
Exactly. Exactly. It's so common in the manifestation community to be focused on one specific method or one framework rather than exploring all the teachers, all the different models, and then picking and choosing what's most aligned with you.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite lessons. And I don't think it was even in Unlock God Mode. I think it may have been one of your podcasts. Was it the 5 or 6 mistakes that people make?
Yes.
And then it was just focusing on one author or one person, and that was it.
The 7 mistakes.
7
most common mistakes of manifestation. It's on my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for years, I'm going to say this out loud because it feels okay to do it right now. For years, I was in Scientology. And in Scientology, they have a lot of good stuff, but there's also not a lot of good stuff. There's some other stuff too, right? So you have to kind of like balance between what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But what's interesting is the beginning of every single course you take in Scientology is we have the tech. We're the only people that have the tech. Nobody else is teaching you the tech. Everybody else is wrong. They've been lying to you. You have to follow this. And if you follow something else as well, was it a panty waist dilettante or something? I think that's the exact word. Don't be a panty weight dilettante. Be strong about the tech. And sometimes it just didn't friggin' work. So yeah, that was when I got out, and I say got out, when I left, it was exciting to see other versions of the same thing, but maybe that worked a little better,
Was there anything in Scientology that you learned that remained useful to you, and what were the downsides and maybe the darker parts of being part of it?
So I had a long career in it, honestly. I started in 1994. I kept going till about 2010. When September the 11th happened, I quit my $100,000 a year job and went to actually work at the higher levels of the church. So some of the good things, there was a lot of good things in the what they call the therapy side of it. I got to learn I was an actual spiritual being, not a lump of meat. I got to look and review a lot of things that have been holding me down in my life. There's a lot of tools that are in there, like communication tools and tools for being ethical, how to make good decisions, almost like business tools in there as well. So a lot of good stuff in there. The bad side of it is the control. It's they're telling you to be free. You should free your mind, Neo, and then they won't let you. So it's a dichotomy because you're fighting something. And then there was a lot of accusational technology, like, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And they seem to, like, as I got in later years of being in it, they seem to be focusing more on that than they were on the stuff that freed you, per se. So it was introverting. You kept looking in at what you were doing wrong, which, when we know about manifestation and positive mental attitude, that's the wrong place to look. It's a shame. I think it would have been, if it wasn't quite so cultish now, it would have probably been okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got out.
Yeah, it was like Escape from Colditz. It was quite a story. When I worked there, I was the head of a particular church that was at the higher levels, and my job was to make sure that all the churches underneath me were bringing in new public. So I'd travel across the country and see the different churches and what have you. I'll probably get like ostracized. Well, I'm already ostracized, so that's okay. So I would travel and I would see that places were empty. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if we have this perfect tech, why is it empty? What's not being applied here that's supposedly, bringing people in?
And what is your answer to that now?
It's funny. A lot of people accuse the church of doing this, that, and the other. I just think they weren't running by their own rules.
Right.
If the stuff works, you should be running by it. And I don't think they were.
So the original concepts may have had...
They had validity, yeah. And then people just went off and thought, oh, I'll do it my way.
Yeah.
And
power probably came into it.
Yep. There was a lot of money grabbing going on at that point too. So there was, donate to this and donate to that and buy this and buy that. And that's kind of harsh on people when they're trying to learn their mind,
Looking back at your life, what would you say were the most pivotal moments that drastically altered the course of your journey?
It's been a lot, James. I mean, I lived in Europe, Sweden, Germany, Belgium. I made a decision to come to the States, which was a big pivotal moment for me. I ended up in Los Angeles. Had an up and down time. I had some phenomenal times in LA when, I was working in the entertainment industry for a while, giving free stuff to celebrities. Can't tell you the fun I had with that. And there were times when I worked for some people that were just asses. Moving over to the East Coast from LA, moving away from LA was a big pivotal moment. It actually freed me from what I call the LA trap. It's chasing a dream that doesn't seem to ever kind of like come to your fingers. And when I came over here, it just seemed so much easier. So, sometimes a change of location is a good thing.
When you first moved to LA, you were homeless at one point.
Yeah.
How did that affect your mindset, your view of life, and how did you go from being homeless to where you are today? Wealthy, abundant.
I tell you, that's a big thing. It's kind of funny. It's also a Napoleon Hill thing. When you experience the bottom, you're not going back. If you've got enough willpower and enough strength left in you, and you can get yourself out of it, and the circumstances are there that you can, and you do it, you look back at that, and that's a lesson, right? That's a reason for being successful. Like, I'm not going back there. There's no way I'm going back there. That was horrendous. If I have to go back there, it's just not freaking happening. So it's a driving factor. And I think Napoleon Hill touches on that a lot. There's that motivation of having lost everything that we were talking about earlier on, having lost everything and now going, you know what? I know I can do it and I'm going to do it. I'm not going back there.
Yeah. For the people that get stuck there, what is happening there in your view?
There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's bad luck. Sometimes it's your behavior. In my case, it was my behavior. I wasn't a very nice person at that point. I used to drink a lot. And the drinking actually was hiding from who I really was. I found out later.
What were you hiding from yourself?
I was just hiding from myself because I was a dick. I'm sorry to swear on your show, but I wasn't a nice person. I know I wasn't a nice person. I even said it to somebody once. So I couldn't confront my own self at that point. It was just too nasty. And years later, as I was doing, different stuff, I went, well, that's all drinking was really.
An escape.
An escape, yeah. It's just, I think that's a lot of what people do drugs for too. It's just, so you don't have to look at who you really are.
And this is why I find mushrooms and psychedelics to be a different form of drug in that it actually forces you to confront the thing you're avoiding. Yeah,
and I think I ran into that a little bit yesterday when we were doing the trip, is that first part, that blackness and that darkness was that time.
It reminded me that it was a stark reminder to me that beginning, the ascent of a trip can be quite rough, and to maybe emphasize that for future clients or future trippers that, hey, as much as I talk good things about psychedelics, what you're about to go into may be one of the most difficult moments of your life if you haven't looked at that clearly.
Yeah, I think so. It's and funny thing, James, was like I was anxious as we said at the beginning of this, but I didn't think. Actually, I was kind of fairly confident that it would be okay, and it was a bit rough. It was
a bit rough, and then I think for you, it turned into one of the most beautiful experiences of your life.
Yeah. I think it's been helpful to go through the things I've gone through to be able to look at things. So as you kept saying to me through the trip, it's just a trip. It's just a trip. You're going to be shown. You said that beforehand, but you're going to be shown what you need to see, and I was, and it was pretty eye opening. I'm still a little kind of blown away, honestly, because I really was like, nah, it can't do anything for me. What's that going to do? Thank you, mushrooms. Going to name one Fred.
I think at one point before we started the trip, you said, James, why do you want me to do this so bad?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Richard, it's not that I want you to do this so bad. It's I'm giving you an invitation. Whether you accept it or not is completely up to you.
I know I wanted it. I really did. I mean, it's like I was like, oh, I'll do it in Bali, or I'll do it. There was like a future point I was going to do it, and you coming here just to visit and then us doing it was like it was good. It forced the point a little bit, but I obviously wanted it badly enough for it to happen.
You mentioned that our trip, in a sense, began 8 months ago.
Yeah,
something like that. When you first discovered my course, my podcast. Mm-hmm. I'd love it if you can take me through that journey and how the course was for you.
Yeah, so I had been somehow not sure how I came across Neville, but then I started searching for more Neville and came across your podcast. I'm like, oh, this is really good. And then I started listening to the way you presented it, and I'm like, this guy's got a really great presentation and a really great voice for it. Like, it relaxes me, it helps me get into it. So when I saw you had this Unlock God Mode, I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. I love the title. I even hesitate. I just bought it. And I get this email. I'm like, oh, I can chat with him too. This is cool. So I was doing the course, and the course was like very, very encouraging and enlightening and a lot of good points. I think you've taken a lot of things from a few different people and put them into a great comprehensive course. And I love the exercises afterwards, because that was the thing I struggled a little bit with in the book. Or the books I was listening to, is like, get the feeling of, or that you doing it in the way you did it was very helpful. So I could actually do that as I went to sleep. So then I think we chatted on the phone, and we had some conversations about like growth, and you asked me a couple of things of how I might grow. If I were you, what would you do? And I had actually worked years ago in .com for some community websites. They were like community building, and somehow we came into that conversation. And the next thing I know, you're starting a community, which I thought was cool. And those, as doing the course and then getting into those community chats or group chats or masterminds or however you want to call it, have been unbelievable. They really have. The people on those calls are so high energy, and it's almost like I could have a really crappy week, and I'd get on the call and I'd be happy in 5 minutes. And it was like an instant mushroom trip. Yeah, just so many good people. I encourage people to join in. I tell you, it's we solve each other's problems. We have great conversations. I've formed some fantastic friendships across the world. It's one of those things where you feel like you're making a difference. I think we all have a similar. In fact, I even hired somebody from the group. So yeah, it's been awesome. So that sort of like was this journey, right? It's like me growing, and then I'd gotten through the course, and we'd had another conversation after one of these calls, and I'm like, "What's next, James?" Mm-hmm. I think you said shrooms.
Well, you kept asking, I want the next level.
I want the next level. Where's phase 2? What's the next course?
And I'm like, well, for me, it's been psychedelics.
And I kind of backed off from that a little bit. But then we discussed coming down to, my wife and I wanted to come to Bali to see you. And so I thought, well, I'll do them there. And the next thing I know is like, oh, I'm coming to America. Can I stay with you? I have an idea.
I have an idea.
Yeah. So that worked out really well.
It's been an epic journey, and it's been such a pleasure to know you and to learn from you. You've been such a valuable member in the group. Your generosity has been noticed by everyone. The way you always contribute, always leave people with value. You invite people on one-on-one calls to help them with their businesses. I mean, it's just amazing for someone who is probably very busy, has a lot of things to do, but you're always taking the time to help others.
Yeah, no, and I am busy, but it's like it's back to the Charles Hannell thing we were talking about in his book, The New Philosophy, where he says if you want to be successful, you have to want it for everyone. And I took that really to heart, and I see why. I think he says if you have poor clients, then you can't make any money anyway because they're all poor. So, but then I was working with a woman who was very much into manifestation and universal law, and she was actually the one that originally introduced me to Charles Hannell. And, when you look at like we are all one, mm-hmm. if we're all spiritual energy, we're all one. So what I do to you, I'm doing to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why would I do something bad to somebody else? Because I'm really just killing myself off. Mm. You're affecting that other energy or that same energy.
Absolutely.
which is powerful.
Absolutely. How do you think you've grown the most in the last couple months from being inside the mastermind, your own spiritual explorations? What's been the biggest change for you this year?
I think I'm seeing a new direction for myself, and I do see expansive growth. I'd gotten to a good level. I have gotten to a good level. We do well. I have everything I need. When I want it, I'll get it, and it's not a difficult thing now. I haven't necessarily wanted to create more stuff or more money, but I'm now seeing my sense of purpose being driven towards helping more people.
Mm-hmm.
I come up with this, I really want to help the consciousness grow.
Yes.
And I think that's powerful for me. It makes me happy.
How has your relationship with God evolved throughout your life? And what role does that relationship play in your daily decisions and actions?
That's a good one. I've had many people tell me I should, believe in Jesus and believe in God. And I kind of would like blow it off a little bit. And then as I was listening to more Neville, I started to see the relationship of God being all consciousness. There's a couple of books I've read where they're like, I am God and so are you. So I'm like, okay, so if we are created in the image of God, we're not God, but we're in his image. So that means come to me the same as. We're sort of similar traits or the same traits. So that means that, God's the creator of the entire universe. So therefore I'm the similar or the same. So I can be a creator too. I can create my own universe. I've had conversations in my head with God, like times where I've said, can you show me the way? And I've been shown, but I never really believed in it that much. And I think now it's really much more, especially after this trip. Oh my God. Jane's the godlike replica. I tell you, the whole time I'm sitting in this trip looking at you as if you represented to me the father figure throughout this whole trip. And I kept looking at you as this white, shining, godlike person, the image of, come to me to show me the light. And it's like, I've shown you so many times. Now you'll get it now. And I did. He's always with us. He's always there. He's always helping us.
Yeah.
And directing us. We just have to pay attention.
That was one of the things you mentioned yesterday night, of how the mushrooms really reconfirmed for you the fact that God was always present, always there, always guiding us. And that's one of my favorite aspects of psychedelics, is the knowing you get. It's not anymore about reading it in a book, but truly, truly feeling it.
Yeah, and I used to sort of think of God as, I don't know, some entity that nobody could ever get close to, but we're all part of it.
We're all part of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Richard, what has been the most profound lesson you've learned about love and relationships?
That's a good one too. Is to give and receive love unconditionally, to develop and nurture relationships. My wife is going to be in for a big surprise when she gets back, because I've been cold and hard and, pushed her away a lot and not been very respectful. And for no reason, apart from my own things that I kept using as an excuse to do that. But, she's my soulmate and she's my partner, and it's going to be fun. And all relationships too, but especially that one.
Do you notice your view on relationships changing over the decades? Like, how do you view friendships and relationships in your 60s versus 50s, 40s, 30s?
Well, I think a lot of relationships in my past were relationships based on, forget the boyfriend girlfriend stuff, but friendships were based on common interests, which I think is probably a big thing for friendships. A lot of superficial stuff. A lot of relationships I would be in that were vampiric. I think I mentioned that in the trip, where it was sort of like the person was there really only when they wanted something, which really affected me badly a lot, actually. That kind of put me off, like, being friendly with people. But, I realized recently you can just say no nicely. Just I don't have availability for that right now.
That's your favorite new phrase.
Yes.
I'm not available for this.
Not available for this right now. Yeah. Thank you, Eva. I hope you're listening to this.
Shout out to Eva Kazitsky, who we had on the podcast earlier.
Yeah. I love that.
She's great. Richard, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
Ooh. Well, I'm not going to say don't make mistakes, because I think you learn from mistakes. I would probably say make some mistakes, but learn from mistakes. You know, I'm really learning now, like where I didn't learn before. Yeah, don't be afraid to try. Don't be fearful of things. But you know, when you make a mistake, learn from it and grow from it and build on it. And be curious. Be interested, not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are being interesting these days. Look at me, look at me, look at me. But be interested in other people. Be interested in how they feel and how they're affected by your actions or other people's actions, and care for them. You know, love them and care for them. It's funny, actually. I forget what it was in the course. I think it was a lesson on love, actually. And I really got it. And then all of a sudden I started emanating it throughout my life. And this is actually just coming to me right now. The change, the way people treated me because of the energy I was putting out towards them, was absolutely phenomenal. Because I went from, and this was also something I saw on a TV show too, I went from a headstrong, like ego type of thought to this heart love. It's hard to explain it, but you like just love from your purest heart, and you just emanate that. And all of a sudden, people started being friendly and being nice. And I'm like, that's interesting. I used to go to this coffee place and get coffee. And one day, one of the girls said, "Oh, we always love it when you come here because you always make us so happy." I've never heard that before. So that was nice.
Can you explain exactly what you did and what shifted for you?
I can try. You know, you have your like, I want to be liked ego.
Yes.
Right. So that was kind of my operating basis, you know, like me. And it was actually David Icke. I think you've heard of David Icke. He explained it on his show, Escape the Matrix. He said, take that away and make it just emanate purely right from in your heart. It's like almost like this energy source inside of your heart that you emanate love to everybody. So I started doing that. I don't know if it's like trial and error.
Wow.
Yeah, and it seemed to be almost instant.
You know what you remind me of is that energy never lies.
Right.
And I have learned this lesson over and over again. If I feel energetically not right about something before, it will never go right.
Yeah.
And if I have a knowing or an energetic feeling of, I feel good about this, I feel like this is going to be a success.
Yeah.
It always goes well.
It's funny, isn't it?
And even as we were recording this podcast, I took a break and I went for a walk and I refound my energy. And now it's like back in the flow. And it's always about looking for that flow, looking for that divine spark to be flowing through you, channeling through you.
Yeah, I agree.
Richard, you enjoy helping others reach their potential. What's the most common limiting belief you see in people that you mentor, and how do you guide them to overcome it?
I think the most part is fear. There was one of our girls on the calls that like was scared of doing something. So I think it was like creating a podcast, and we had a conversation on the phone, and I explained to her the different types of fears and what they were, and you know, the fear of loss, the fear of death, fear of loss of health, fear of loss of love, fear of loss of money, fear of embarrassment or what other people will think. Like, just find the one that you're fearful of and just, you know, confront it.
What's been a fear that you've confronted this year?
This year, looking inside.
Oh, wow.
Again.
Wow.
You know, I'd done it for a long time, and then I kind of went backed away from it. And now I'm back looking and learning and being curious.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's helping me grow. We'll go back to you talked about earlier on about the mushroom trip and how I came to that. That was that start of the journey was like, I'm looking. And I'll say this again. It's like the mushroom trip started 8 months ago.
Wow.
It's all the things went to the right place. Things were put in my life to reinforce other things and to grow and to get to that next stage to where I got to this point where I'm okay, now it's really, now we're really going to delve into it.
What I'm thinking is you had the intention of, I'm ready to see, show me.
Yeah.
And over the next couple months, the universe kept showing you bits and pieces and clues.
Well, how many times did they ask you for phase 2?
That's right. Well, I was like, fine, I'm flying over.
Here it is. I got what I asked for. Always get what I asked for.
You're a great manifester.
I know, right? Oh, dear. I wanted to say this on this podcast because I think this was actually pretty funny. You had interviewed Steve Pavlina.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, and he talked about, I think it was like a group manifestation they were doing. And I was listening to his podcast at 4 a.m. because they couldn't sleep. And he starts talking about butterflies. And not 4 days beforehand, I was looking out of my back window and I've got 2 big bushes, butterfly bushes, and it was covered in them. And I remembered consciously thinking, oh, that's interesting. Butterflies. Not even knowing that you were going to have this conversation. And then it comes up and I was like, holy cow. And then he started talking about manifesting pennies. And I'm seeding my front lawn, and as I'm doing the aeration and what have you, I look down, and there's a penny. I'm telling you, I haven't found a penny in 100 years. It's just sitting there like a sign from the universe again. Well, then he said, and this was even funnier, he said, then we started manifesting dimes and nickels. And as I was waiting for you at the airport, I haven't told you this, I opened the door and it was 20 cents.
Amazing.
Okay, it's another sign. Oh, dear.
It's fantastic. What's really interesting about that is that podcast episode was recorded a while back.
Oh, was it?
And I just published it, and you still got the manifestations. So
Yeah,
even though the butterfly experiment happened some time back, you were tuning into that timeline and you started seeing butterflies.
It's funny.
It really goes to show there's no time. There's no time delay, or there's all these different timelines, but it's all happening now.
Yeah. Well, the past is just a series of events that happened once. Mm-hmm. It's all in the big block now, isn't it? Yeah, I think that I found that through the trip too. I was having a little bit of sort of like grappling with what's reality and what's time, and I'd wake up and I'm like, what time is it now? And you're like, well, it's 56 minutes later or something, and I'm like, oh, it seemed like a second.
Yeah,
nothing changed. So
yeah, the time on mushroom trips is so interesting. It either feels like an eternity, or it can stretch, it can shrink. It's so fascinating.
I have to say this about the mushrooms. So somebody had said to me that mushrooms give you a sense of altered reality and you don't know if it's real or not. And I know now I don't agree with that. It's showing you what you need to see.
Yeah. Exactly. I've never felt like it was hallucinating. I felt like it was peering behind the veil of reality. Mm-hmm. And seeing more deeper layers and deeper truths about reality. At no point did I imagine, I don't know, a pink dragon appearing out of nowhere. Everything that I see on mushrooms makes sense. It somehow fits right into alignment with my own personal beliefs and thoughts and images, which goes in hand with Neville's work of your imagination is creating all of it.
Yeah.
And I think the mushrooms are just showing you deeper levels of your imagination. Yeah. And if imagination creates all of it, then you are creating on the mushrooms.
Yeah, yeah. And, we will touch on this one as well, because you had me read the book, Busting Loose
from the Money Game by Robert Scheinfeld.
Yeah, and I had a hard time a little bit with that book because, it was like it's all an illusion. It's all a game. You're here because you mocked up this game so you could hide from who you really are. Mm-hmm. And I struggled with that. I really did. And now I've done the trip. I'm like, oh yeah, now I get it. Now I see what that really looks like, you know. And through the trip, I'm like, I can create anything. I can really just manifest anything I want, any game, anything, just do it, manifest it. It's just a big freaking game.
That book feels like a trip to me.
Yeah.
When you read Busting Loose from the Money Game, which, by the way, for anyone listening, when you look this book up and you'll see the cheesiest cover, corniest cover, and I believe it's on purpose so that only the right people go past the cover and read the gems inside. And when I first discovered this book, I was experimenting with DMT, which is a very potent psychedelic. And so I would explore the DMT realm, and then I would read the book. And the book felt like a guidebook to DMT, because they're both on DMT. I would perceive the hologram of reality, the holographic qualities of reality. And the book is all talking about the hologram.
Yeah.
It is about money in some sense, but it's so much deeper and so much more mysterious.
Well, I got a big cognition from that book where he was talking about like busting the eggs or breaking loose from the money part. And I'm like, well, my big cognition was you can't just do it on money. You have to do it on everything, because everything's interconnected.
Yes.
So I started looking at the sort of busting the relationship eggs, or, you know, the other eggs that wasn't, because I didn't really have a big money.
You had
egg.
no issues with money. So it almost didn't apply to you at all.
Yeah. But it was busting loose from the silly game you made up.
Yes. Yeah. Just for context for people listening. So the busting loose, the egg of resistance, I want to explain that. How would you describe it?
I think it's areas that you're not confronting.
Yeah, for me, it's like this stuck or blocked energy that you have in your life around anything: relationships, money, health, self-image. And imagine it's the stuck energy in the form of an egg, and your soul is guiding you towards these stuck bits of resistance so you can break them open, release the trapped energy, and flow it back into yourself and reclaim the power of whatever that belief or blocked energy had over you.
Yeah, I think I'll put it a little bit differently than that. And it's, for my context, I mean, that's a great context, James, but my context, it's like you have this thing that you've been avoiding, right? Not confronting. And he has you look at it, if not all at once, in little bits. So you slowly see more and more of the picture of the thing that you're not looking at. And I learned that a lot in doing Scientology auditing, or, you know, or therapy, or what you want to call it, is the things that you avoid the most persist. And the ones you lie about persist because there's a lie in it. But when you actually turn around and face it and say, oh yeah, that's what it was, it disappears.
Yeah. Yeah. I was at a retreat in Austin last week with Danny Miranda, and one of the things he has you do is really look at the truth of your life. Where are you still hiding?
Right.
Where are you not allowing other people to see your truth? Where are you not allowing yourself to see truth? And without forcing anyone in the group, Danny got us to reveal the most vulnerable aspects of ourselves, things that we're afraid to share. And you know, first of all, the moment anyone else shared something vulnerable, everyone else saw themselves in that person, even if the situation was completely different. We all relate to each other's vulnerabilities. But also, when I shared something vulnerable, it started losing its charge. By sharing it out in the open, it's like sunlight hitting moldy surfaces and dissolving the whatever shame, whatever guilt you're carrying about it.
Yeah, the emotional charge that's surrounding it, yeah.
I'm curious, how has been your journey with being vulnerable and allowing others to see more of you?
It's evolving. I think this trip is going to help that a lot. I think up until this point, it's been still a little bit of the protective layer. I formed a relationship with one of our group members, and we would share a lot of our fears and what have you, and that was helpful for both of us. It's kind of funny, we both had the same fears.
What was one of the fears?
So being vulnerable, actually, you know, now I think back, it was like being vulnerable and like allowing, allowing people to see you. In fact, he wrote to me on Telegraph and said, after we had that conversation, he's like, he realized just how much he wasn't, and how he wouldn't let anybody in, and he hadn't even looked at it. And I was doing the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's the journey I'm on as well.
Yeah.
For anyone listening to this, expect some more vulnerable videos coming on my YouTube channel, because I have realized the importance of, I used to believe a lot in privacy and just sort of keeping things to myself, but there are consequences for that.
Yeah.
And the consequences is you never allow people to be intimate friends with you. You don't allow them to see you as your full self, and you're dimming your light, because whenever you hide something, you're either unconsciously or consciously telling yourself that part of me does not deserve to be seen or is not allowed to be seen.
Yeah, and it's still back to that non-confront, or, what do they say? A problem shared is a problem halved.
Oh, that's good.
That's an English type phrase, I think. It's sometimes, it's almost like doing a confessional, isn't it? It's good to get it out.
To the right people.
Yeah.
In the right context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be there has to be somebody that you can trust that will handle your communication with appropriateness, I guess.
That or the mushroom spirit.
There's that.
Richard, I'm curious, how has your relationship with time changed since the last couple of decades? I'm curious how you think of time in your 60s versus your 30s versus earlier.
It seems to be going faster, actually. It's almost like I'm looking now, I'm like, oh my God, it's 60. It's going to be time to start again soon. So I want to now I think I will be more careful with what I do with it and make it more productive in the time I spend. I know that, we talk about time is an illusion. It is. The body is aging. I think is more the problem I've got with that is I don't know. It seems to be rushing by a little bit, honestly.
One of the things I know about you is you're quite good with time management. And I'm curious if you can share some of the principles that have kept you organized, kept you in good time management.
Yeah, actually I did a course when I was in financial planning. You write a list, three sections, A, B's, and C's. Okay. You put your priorities of A's, which is must-dos. I have to do this. So all the A's are the must-dos. The B's are all the nice to-dos. And the C's are all the maybes, kind of like waste of time stuff, like, going on Facebook or something.
And it's amazing how many C's pop up.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people do
I'm
C's.
so busy, but I have all these C's on my list.
Yeah. And people do the C's first because it's easy and nice.
Yep.
And then you just prioritize them, 1 through whatever, how many you have. A good exercise I learned the other day actually was if you once you've even prioritized them, you then look at them and run one against the other and see which one is the most important. And then, like which one's the most important to do. And then for me, actually, it's I call it a cycle of action, which is do it and do it now. That was when COVID hit and we were super busy building websites. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to do this and then pick it up and then put it down over there and then pick it up and put it down over there or whatever, like start, not do something and then come back to it. For me, the secret to efficiency is do the most important things and do them right away. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to handle them twice. You think about that, right? Let's say you pick up a paper to write something and then you put it down. Then you pick it up again to do it. You put it down, you do it like 3 or 4 times. That's taking you 4 times as long to do the thing you could have done the first time because you're Q&Aing with it. You're like, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it?
You're Q&Aing with it.
And it's like, pick it up and do it. Okay, now it's finished. You can move on to the next thing. I think if you go back to that time management thing, that's really the key is just being efficient is doing the thing as you're doing the thing.
Well, I like how you told me earlier, start, change, stop. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, start, change, stop is the anatomy of a cycle of action. It's a term I learned. So you pick up the thing. That's the start. That's the start of the action. Change is changing its position in time and space and, altering it in some way, doing the action. And then when you're done, you end cycle, you finish, you stop it. You're done, you're finished. That's it. Now, if you haven't finished it and it has to be done later, you're still in change. So it's change. Okay, now I've actually finished the product or the thing.
So the key is to bring as many things of actual importance to that stop finish line.
Yeah, it's like we're talking about picking up the piece of paper, right? So I picked up the piece of paper, right? The start was picking it up. The change is it's now in my hand, and I put it down again.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't finished the cycle of action yet, so I'm picking it up again later, picking it up again later, picking it up again later. Well, if you'd have done the job, that would be the stop.
Richard, do you believe in destiny or free will?
I think free will, but with caveats. I say that because it's now, the question in my mind now is, what's God's plan?
That's right.
Is there a master plan?
That is such a great question. And I think I literally heard this the other day. Someone talking about how they stopped having personal goals because they're like, well, God has a better plan. So I'm just going to focus on God.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pray for God's divine plan to come into my life.
Yeah. What does that mean? That's a good question. I don't know what that means for myself. I think, if it's raising people up, then however you do that is in alignment with God,
Maybe a great intention is to pray to God and say, show me the most aligned divine next step in my journey. Bring the right people, resources, ideas, and you instruct your superconscious mind, subconscious mind to deliver to the exact right plan.
Yeah, it's funny, you talk about praying. I did this a few years ago when I literally sat there and had a conversation with God at 3:00 in the morning. That's my witching hour. And I was asking, show me the way, show me the way, show me the way. And the idea of what I needed to do at that point popped into my head.
Amazing.
Right? And it was like, oh, okay, thank you. And so here, okay, so I can expand on this actually, because this is actually quite a funny story. So I was we decided to go to this church, and I was going to do this whole ministry, they called it. And we're all sitting in a men's group, and we're talking about people kept saying about God's plan, God's plans, God's plan. And this guy said, well, I had this idea to start this trucking company where I do advertising on the side of trucks. And I got all the trucks, in my mind. And he's like, but I'm just waiting for God to give me a sign. I'm like, well, the sign was the idea, wasn't it? He's not buying you a truck. That's the bit you have to do. But isn't it that? I mean, if you get that, I think maybe that is it. It's the idea that comes into your head.
Yep.
That's God telling you, this is what I want you to do, as long as it's good.
Absolutely. I've had this experience quite a few times in my life where I meditate for a couple of minutes, not even consciously sometimes, but just lie down on my bed or sit down in a moment of silence. And in that gap, in that moment of silence, the right idea drops.
Yep.
Because it finally has the space to be heard.
Yep.
Or the other experience that I often have is a knowing. I've set an intention. I know I want to do something. And then at some point, I get this knowing feeling of, oh, it's done. And this is something Neville talks a lot about, is get to the feeling of it's done. Whatever it is you want, get to the feeling of knowing that it's a done deal. Yeah. Because in some reality, it already is. Yeah. In your imagination, in the 4D, as Neville calls it, it is. Yeah. And so it's just a matter of time and space for it to come into your life.
Did I ever tell you about my one of the signs that was sent to me? So I was at this it's through this ministry actually, and so we're doing the ministry. I'm on week 4 or 5, and somehow I decided that I was going to join this kayak club, and we were going to kayak across the lake and go to this island and then kayak back. It was just like a fun evening. So I'm doing this course or this ministry, and I was on the middle of the lake. I'm like, all right, we'll try something here. God, give me a sign that you exist. So I kid you not, 5 minutes later, the most vicious storm appeared. And it gets better, and blew me up on this guy's beach at his house. Okay. So he's like looking out the window. Suddenly he sees me on his beach, and he comes out. He's like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He says, like, you know,
He's like, what happened?
what happened?
Like,
And
I tested God.
I told him, and no, I didn't say that. I just said I got blown up on the beach. He said, "Well, listen, put your kayak in the back of my truck. I'll drive you back to the car." So I'm talking to him, and the guy's name is Gary Cagnalosi or something. I'm like, "What do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm an author." I'm like, "Oh, what did you write?" He's like, "The Second Coming of Christ."
Fantastic.
I know, right? And I'm like, wow.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah, it was
Be
pretty
careful
quick.
what you ask for.
Yeah.
You've talked to me yesterday or the day before about necessity level, and I'd love it if you could touch on that a little bit. Well, I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, how bad do you want something?
Yeah.
It's if you want to be successful, how badly do you want to be successful? Is it a mediocre, like, I'd like to be successful, or is it I'm homeless and I need to be successful, so I've got to raise my necessity level?
That's it. That's what you said to me yesterday. I was like, whoa, raise your necessity level.
Yeah.
The fact that you can do that, you can consciously choose to raise your burning desire, your necessity level,
or your goals or whatever. I did it with this house that you're sitting in right now. This house was way out of our price range, probably $200,000 out of our price range, at the time, but we bought it anyway, which raised our necessity level. Right now, we had to get more successful to pay for it, so we upped the game.
It's paradoxical because you might think, oh, I'll get something when I'm ready for it, but in some sense, what you're saying is you have to go after the thing before you fully feel ready for it, to stretch yourself to become that person.
Yeah, and it's almost like a manifestation method in a way, isn't it? You get the thing, and then the universe is going to provide you the means to afford it. Like, you've already mocked it up. It's here. It's like, I have it now already.
You acted as if.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Richard, as you look ahead, what is the vision for the next chapter of your life, both spiritually and professionally?
Professionally, I'm going to grow a business that enables people that have businesses based on their sole purpose. And we're going to help them grow their business. We're going to help them build their business. Some people may need help developing their sole purpose and their business purpose. They may need technological help, marketing help, guidance. I'd like to grow a community that has people in it that specialize in things so that they can be resources to be drawn from, referral network. I'd like to build at some point a big community like that we'll call them soulpreneurs. So entrepreneurs that have soul businesses that it's something that drives them. I'm developing it now. I'm actually working on it. The technology side of stuff is just stuff I already do, so that's easy. Yeah, that's professionally. What was the other part? Spiritually, to keep learning and keep being creative, keep believing in myself and others. The mushroom trip has really opened up my mind, and I know I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that, or a lot more. So I think that's going to be showing me a lot of what I need to know.
Is there a desire or a goal you have for 2025? What's your deepest intention for the upcoming year?
Haven't set that one yet. I'm going to defer that to January the 1st. And I'll tell you why. And this is a good thing to lead into like one of our very successful actions, is my wife and I will have picked this task to do, or not this task, this thing to do, where we go and find a random coffee shop. It looks kind of cool and trendy and whatever, nice coffee. And we get their napkins and we write our goals on them. And we've been doing this for quite some time.
I've seen the napkins from this year.
Yeah. We started this, oh my goodness, back in, how far back was it? 2012?
Wow.
And our first years were quite hefty, lofty goals. We wanted the Jaguar. She wanted the Tesla. We wanted the big house with the things. Wanted to be a citizen, actually, of America, which I wasn't at the time. So these big, hefty goals. And we kind of we were doing it. And as we went through the years, we noticed it was taking 4, 5, 6 years to achieve some of this stuff. I think Matthew McConaughey even talks about that. It takes like a 7-year thing. And as we've progressed and got more capable and more productive and more into the whole thing, it's taking less time. Whereas this year, we've already done it. We did all the things. Now I have to question: do we need to shift our focus and actually think bigger? Because if they're that easy to do, maybe I need to really challenge myself a little more and,
that's right.
Raise my necessity level.
That's right.
So we're planning on moving. I'm going to try and find a house I can't afford.
Now, when you write this list on January 1st, do you look back at it every couple days, every week for the rest of the year, or do you just leave it in a drawer and not look at it again?
We kind of set the intention, and then kind of like as we do things, it's funny, we kind of figured out that it just works itself out, and we ended up doing them anyway. We do review all the years and see if there's anything we did miss.
Do you also find that your desires change sometimes, and the thing you wanted 5 years ago on that list does no longer apply?
No, we're pretty good about picking the right things. Business goals have changed more than anything else, because business changes on with the environment and with what's happening in work and stuff. So yeah.
So write the list, review it, take actions. Yeah. Take inspired actions.
Take inspired actions. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they just appear, right? I mean, it's the universe conspires to give you what you're looking for. The Jaguar one was a good one. I wanted the sports car, and one night I was sitting up midnight looking through Jaguars, and I saw this one. It was beautiful, most nice sports version. So I don't know what I did. I think I just filled out a form and said, "Yeah, I want that one." That was my doing part, right? And the guy called me at 8:00 next morning and said, "Let me run your credit. How much you putting down? It's yours." And we drove from North Carolina to Virginia to pick it up. Actually drove up there in the worst car I could possibly find as a rental, so I could come back in the best car I could possibly.
Fantastic.
And then this year, Colleen got her Tesla that she wanted, which was her dream car. So,
well, there's a story about how you left the Jaguar or sold it to someone else, and there's also a cool manifestation piece of that as well, I think.
Yeah, so I actually, that car was like the most wonderful thing for me. It was like my lifetime achievement award. Actually, it was the first time I actually had something that was big enough and beautiful enough and expensive enough I could say I achieved something. I had that car for 7 years. I won many awards at car shows with it, and I ran the club for Jaguars for the whole state. And then when I decided I was going to sell it, a guy offered me the exact same price that I paid for it. And when he picked it up, somehow it was 7 years to the day, to the hour.
No way.
Like he literally was driving away at 11 a.m. on the Saturday morning of what day it was. Wow. I remember looking at it because it was on my Facebook timeline too,
Talk about a 7-year cycle.
I know, right? So, and he calls me occasionally and tells me how much he loves the car, which is nice.
Oh, it's amazing. Richard, it's been such a beautiful conversation. Is there anything I haven't touched on or asked you about that you wanted to share with the listener?
No, but I did want to thank you. I want to thank you for creating what you've created. I think it's very special. You're doing good work, and I want people to know how much James means to me in terms of like a leader and an educator, and what a fantastic experience this has been. Him coming here. You want a trip master? Take it with James. I'm telling you, go to Bali or something. Or have him come to you. It's relatively cheap. No, seriously, it's well worth it. You've been wonderful, and I thank you from the deepest of my heart.
I feel that, brother, and I want to thank you as well for all the wisdom and guidance that you've shown me, and for being an inspiration to me, and your values, your generosity, your giving spirit. It's meant a lot to me. It's inspired me a lot. It's inspired me to give more as well. So thank you for that.
Good. Yeah. Thanks.
Let's leave the listener with 2 or 3 books that they must read if they want to be successful or if they want to raise their consciousness. What, in your opinion, are those books?
Okay, so what's the Neville Goddard one I was talking about? Feeling is the Secret
is a phenomenal book.
Anything by Neville, actually. I mean, it's very good. I think take a look at Charles Hannell too. But I think, you know what? Actually, a better version of the Charles Hannell stuff, because it's almost duplicated, is the
Power of Your Subconscious
Power
Mind.
of Your Subconscious Mind by, go and remind me because I forget it.
Dr. Joseph Murphy.
Dr. Joseph Murphy. That's an awesome one. And the last one, let me think what is good. You know, I'm going to say something out of left field here. I'm reading this book right now because it's helping me with developing my course about finding your purpose. But it's called The On Purpose Person by Kevin McCarthy. I think it's Kevin McCarthy. Just The On Purpose Person. Look it up. The exercises they have you do, I'm giving you half my course here, are just absolutely phenomenal.
Awesome.
You'll really like be able to dig in.
Beautiful. Feeling is the secret, the power of your subconscious mind, and the on purpose person.
Oh, and then of course the other, if we're going to add one on top, Napoleon Hill, which is the master key to success.
The master key to success. Beautiful.
That's what it is. It's the expanded version of Think and Grow Rich.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. Richard, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I deeply appreciate you. I hope the listener has learned a lot from this. I certainly have. And I'm sure we'll see a lot more of you in the world.
Thank you, James. And you too.
When is the YouTube channel coming?
How many times have you asked me that?
Well,
the course is coming first.
Amazing.
It's funny actually. Before we leave, and somebody else has said this to me. I see you as a person that should do podcasts, and you'd said the same thing to me, and I'm like, it's not my purpose yet.
You have a lot of stories to share.
Yeah. The course is coming first. We're gonna have a course for Unlock God Mode members to try out for free, so I can test it on you all.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the James Xander Trip with special guest Richard Lloyd-Roberts. We'll have links to his work in the show notes. Highly recommend DMing Richard and letting him know what you thought of this episode if you appreciated it. And if you want to join Unlock God Mode and the God Mode Mastermind, head over to unlockgodmode.org. You'll meet me inside the group, Richard's in there, and so many beautiful souls. Make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and we'll see you in the next episode.